So where's the truth? Has the media, the intelligence services, and various courts gotten it all wrong, or is the Barr Summary less than forthcoming? Is the Mueller Report not addressing facts that it may have, but not enough to use as indictments? Questions being asked by our guest, Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University. He is tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg and joins us. Bill, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
So just a top-line reaction to what we heard and what we saw in the letter from William Barr summarizing the results of the investigation, a 2-year investigation by Robert Mueller.
Well, this is a lot to explain in a very clear manner to almost anyone. It's got very twisted curves and pathways. But ultimately, we've been sitting on the sidelines for 2 years waiting for a report from Robert Mueller, and it was released, but it was released to the man who was appointed by the president a month ago, who had previously written that the president shouldn't be indicted for anything while he's a sitting president, which sort of was a cue to the president that he had the president's back. What we're really looking at is a situation where the media has provided enormous information through various sources. The New York Times, the Washington Post in particular have been doing exhaustive investigations, as well as various TV shows, providing us with much information about Manafort, Flynn, Gates, Cohen, and a host of others. And now we're being told that while you've seen all of this reported in the news, and while the U.S. Intelligence agencies have reported that the Russians did meddle, the Mueller report doesn't come to any clear conclusions, and I think that's going to be problematic for the United States because
it came to a clear conclusion that the president did not collude or cooperate with Russia, and the campaign did not in 2016. That's stated.
Exactly. So it's good that you clarify it. So they're not saying that the Russians were not involved, but they're saying that Donald Trump was not involved with the Russians. So it was essentially a one-way aid by the Russians, not with the Trump team or President Trump being involved.
I guess one of the questions, and you raised this about William Barr, and there is going to be a credibility issue. You just raised it yourself. He, in his letter, said that is our, meaning on myself and Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, our determination was made without regard to and is not based on the constitutional considerations that surround the indictment and criminal prosecution of a sitting president. In other words, he's saying that they made that decision independent of any consideration over whether a sitting president can be indicted.
Well, it's a really interesting point, and in some ways it's a little bit of a risk for Barr and Trump. Because the way it was written, it sort of allows the president not to have to face future indictments for colluding with the Russians after he's out of office. So this lays a pathway that sort of gives him a free and clear future, not to be having to face these issues in the future. So this is pretty much a clean sweep for President Trump and for his close advisors in terms of participating in Russian collusion. It does not necessarily mean that people like Roger Stone and others are still not going to be on the hook, but the president himself has gotten sort of a hall pass.
And there are some other investigations underway. The state of New York, for example, is looking at issues related to the emoluments clause and whether or not there's a business connection with President Trump and what he's conducting business as president, but it's totally separate. I wonder the politics of this bill because we have a lot of America watching 2 years, a lot of discussion. It's been fodder for a lot of the TV shows. And now we're talking about, getting down to the nitty and the gritty with the presidential campaign. I know it's early, but they're doing it, and they're talking about health care. They're talking about, Medicare for all, and there's a lot of international issues at stake and the economy. And when you see a headline on the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, it says, special report finds no collusion. You kind of wonder if people say, okay, it's over with now, let's just move on. And Democrats are determined to keep this up, and I wonder if this is going to work for them or not.
Well, I think an early cue was Nancy Pelosi when she took over the Speaker's reign this year, where she said that she was not going to proceed towards impeachment unless there was compelling evidence that was overwhelming and had bipartisan support. Well, it was unlikely that there was ever going to be bipartisan support. I think the Democrats, as a broad group, are hoping that the election of 2020 becomes the removal process for Donald Trump. If they push for impeachment, they could, in a sense, find themselves in a similar situation to the Mueller Report, where they don't get the votes, and then it sort of further strengthens the president's position in terms of reelection. So I think the smart money is not to go after an impeachment, but to continue all of these investigations, to find out if there is anything that is justifiable in terms of punishment, either for Trump or for others, and have that be sort of a major sort of storyline going through 2020.
The Republicans, and the president has made this too, about Hillary Clinton again too. They've talked about the Hillary Clinton campaign and engaged an organization to investigate, et cetera. Seems to me that also is kind of looking at the past, and I'm not sure if that works as an argument right now to be made. Maybe they should just, and I'm not trying to give them advice, and I just wonder politically if it would make more sense to just say, look, we won, let's move along, let's talk about the business of America.
Well, you have to realize that the president has a certain personality where he can't let things go. This was displayed over the last 2 weeks or so with continued attacks on John McCain, who's been dead for months. And one of President Trump's big rally cries was to lock up Clinton, to go after Clinton. And now he's continuing this mantra at the same time that Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump both have security issues with regards to their email. So, he has the unique ability to see, like many do, the parts of the world that they don't like and go after them and not see the whole picture. His base tends to support him. When we look at 2016 onward, he's lost virtually nothing of his base, even through this firestorm of media coverage and announcements of indictments and convictions. And I think he believes that this is his pathway for reelection. In the end, though, traditionally the idea in political science was that when politics and elections seem really dirty, it serves as a mechanism for voter suppression, particularly for some groups within society. It's going to be interesting in 2020 to see whether or not all of these negative stories and trials and such are going to depress or suppress voter turnout, or whether or not it'll be like 2018, where we saw the Democrats ride on a very large wave of anger, essentially, at what's been going on in politics, and got the House of Representatives in their camp.
I'm going to wrap up in a second here, but I did want to get this question in because you've written about this many times before and having to do with the media. And I just wanted to get a sense of what you think was well served and ill served by the media in this whole last couple of years.
Well, I think there was a responsibility for the media to do their investigations as much as they could. I think the reality is that no one is really faulting the storylines and the revelations that came out of the various exposés. I think what happens is that we're confronted with the media presenting a story along with the intelligence services that the administration and particularly the Mueller Report and now the Barr Summary is not sort of buying in. I mean, we have to realize that historically we've had other special prosecutors. Donald Trump did not make the mistake that Richard Nixon made with Archibald Cox in terms of firing him. The big concern all along was that perhaps the president was going to fire Mueller. He never did that. If he would have, he would have probably been much more on a path towards impeachment, because the society, in particular the politicos, would have seen that as sort of a major affront. So there's been this careful calculation between the way the media is operated and the way the government is operated. And people have to make a choice ultimately on what they believe. I mean, the president made the statement, you played it in your little clip, that he's been completely exonerated. Well, even Barr says that's not true. but yet he still utters those words, and his supporters sort of remember what he is saying and embrace it. So we live in a very polarized society, and that's going to be a particular challenge for who gets to be the Democratic nominee, how they can balance sort of what's been transpiring and what we're going to do as a society going forward.
Dr. William Rosenberg. Bill, thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science, Drexel University, joining us and tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg, Rosenberg.